Have you ever wondered why you keep doing the same destructive things over and over again, even when you know they're harming you? You promise yourself you'll stop tomorrow. You feel guilty about it today, and yet somehow you find yourself back in the same pattern, as if you're trapped in an invisible cage that you can't break free from. Tonight, you might go to bed swearing that tomorrow will be different, that you'll finally have the willpower to change, but deep down there's this sinking feeling that you'll wake up and repeat the exact same cycle. The truth is, you're not weak, you're not broken, and you don't lack willpower. What you lack is understanding of how change really works. And the ancient Taoists discovered something about breaking bad habits that modern psychology is only now beginning to understand. The conventional approach to breaking bad habits is like trying to stop a river by building a dam with your bare hands. We use force, we rely on willpower, we create elaborate systems of rewards and punishments, and then we wonder why we fail again and again. We beat ourselves up, we feel shame, we promise to try harder next time, and the cycle continues. But what if I told you that the secret to destroying bad habits isn't about trying harder, but about trying differently? What if the key isn't in fighting your habits, but in understanding them so deeply that they dissolve naturally, like mist disappearing in the morning sun? The Tao Te Ching speaks of Wu Wei, often translated as non-action, but it's not about doing nothing. Wu Wei is about acting in harmony with natural forces rather than against them. When you try to force yourself to stop a bad habit, you're creating resistance. And resistance creates tension, and tension creates the very stress that often drives us back to our destructive patterns in the first place. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you push, the more force it exerts upward. And the moment you get tired and let go, it shoots up with even more energy than before. 1. Understanding the root rather than fighting the branches. In Taoist thinking, everything has a root and branches. Your bad habit is just the branch, the visible manifestation of something deeper. Most people spend all their energy trying to cut off the branches, but as any gardener knows, if you don't address the root, the branches will grow back stronger than ever. Your habit of scrolling social media for hours isn't really about social media. Your tendency to overeat isn't really about food. Your pattern of procrastination isn't really about laziness. These are just the ways your deeper needs and unmet emotions express themselves. The Taoists understood that human beings are like water, always seeking the path of least resistance toward fulfillment. When we have a bad habit, it means we've found a way to meet a legitimate need through an illegitimate method. The person who can't stop checking their phone isn't addicted to technology. They're seeking connection, validation, or escape from uncomfortable emotions. The person who overeats isn't just hungry for food. They're hungry for comfort, for control, for the soothing rhythm of a familiar activity. When you understand what real need your habit is trying to fulfill, you can find healthier ways to meet that need, and the bad habit begins to lose its power over you naturally. This is why willpower fails so consistently. You're essentially telling yourself to stop meeting a legitimate need, and that creates an internal war. Part of you wants to change, but another part of you knows it needs what that habit provides. The Taoist approach is to honor both parts. Yes, you want to change. And yes, you have real needs that must be met. The solution isn't to suppress the need, but to find a better way to fulfill it. 2. Embracing the principle of gradual transformation. The Tao teaches us that all lasting change happens gradually, like the way water slowly carves through stone. We live in a culture obsessed with dramatic transformations, with before and after photos, with radical life changes that happen overnight. But this obsession with speed is actually working against us. When you try to change too quickly, you trigger your nervous system's alarm bells. Your unconscious mind perceives rapid change as a threat to your survival, and it will fight you every step of the way. Think about how nature works. A seed doesn't become a tree overnight. The seasons don't change suddenly. The sun doesn't leap across the sky. Everything in nature follows the principle of gradual, consistent movement. Your bad habits formed gradually, through countless repetitions over months or years, and they will dissolve gradually through the same process in reverse. This isn't slower, it's actually faster, because gradual change creates lasting change. When you try to change overnight, you might succeed for a few days or weeks, but then you snap back to your old patterns with even more force. The Taoist approach is to make changes so small that they almost don't feel like changes at all. If you want to stop checking your phone compulsively, don't try to quit cold turkey. Instead, try placing your phone in another room for just 10 minutes a day. If you want to stop overeating, don't go on a dramatic diet. Instead, try putting your fork down between every few bites and taking a deep breath. These changes are so gentle that they don't trigger your internal resistance, but they plant seeds of new awareness that will grow naturally over time. This gradual approach also allows you to learn about yourself in the process. When you make dramatic changes, you're often just replacing one compulsive pattern with another. But when you change slowly, you begin to notice things. You notice what triggers your bad habit. You notice what emotions come up when you can't engage in it. You notice what you're really seeking when you feel the urge to repeat the pattern. This awareness is incredibly valuable because it gives you the information you need to make lasting changes. How many times have you felt that restless energy building up inside you? That uncomfortable feeling that something isn't right, and you've reached for your bad habit like a security blanket? Take a moment right now and think about your own patterns. What does that feeling feel like in your body? Where do you feel it? What time of day does it usually happen? If you've been struggling with a habit that you can't seem to break, I want you to know that thousands of people watching this understand exactly what you're going through. Drop a comment below and simply write, "I'm ready to understand my patterns." Sometimes just acknowledging where we are is the first step toward transformation, and your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. 3. Working with energy rather than against it. The Taoists discovered something profound about human nature. We have natural rhythms, natural flows of energy throughout the day and throughout our lives. Bad habits often develop when we're fighting against these natural rhythms instead of working with them. You might notice that you're most likely to engage in your bad habit at certain times of day, when you're feeling certain emotions, or when you're in certain environments. Instead of seeing this as weakness, the Taoist sees this as valuable information about your natural energy patterns. Most bad habits serve a function in regulating our energy. When you're feeling overwhelmed, you might reach for something that calms you down. When you're feeling depleted, you might reach for something that gives you a quick burst of energy or pleasure. When you're feeling disconnected, you might reach for something that makes you feel temporarily connected. The habit isn't the problem. It's actually your system's intelligent attempt to maintain balance. The problem is that you've chosen a method that creates more problems than it solves. The Taoist approach is to work with this energy regulation system instead of against it. If you notice that you always want to check social media when you're feeling anxious, instead of forcing yourself not to check your phone, you can find other ways to soothe anxiety in that moment. You might take 3 deep breaths. You might step outside for a minute. You might drink a glass of water mindfully. You're not suppressing the need for regulation. You're just giving your system better options. This requires developing what the Taoists call inner awareness, the ability to notice what's happening inside you before it becomes a compulsive action. Most people go from feeling the trigger emotion directly into the habitual behavior without any conscious awareness of what's happening. It's like being asleep at the wheel of your own life. But when you cultivate awareness, you create a gap between the feeling and the action. And in that gap, choice becomes possible. This awareness develops naturally when you stop judging your bad habits and start getting curious about them instead. Every time you notice yourself about to engage in the habit, instead of immediately trying to stop yourself, pause and ask, what am I really needing right now? What is my system trying to regulate? Sometimes the answer will surprise you. You might realize that you're not actually craving the substance or activity itself. You're craving rest, or attention, or a sense of accomplishment, or relief from a particular emotion. 4. The power of environmental harmony. The Tao teaches that everything is interconnected, that we are not separate from our environment but deeply influenced by it. Your bad habits don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in relationship to your surroundings, your relationships, your daily routines, and your physical environment. One of the most powerful ways to break a bad habit without willpower is to change the environment that triggers it. This isn't about avoiding temptation forever. It's about creating conditions that make the good choice easier and the bad choice less automatic. If you want to stop eating junk food, don't rely on willpower when you're standing in front of the refrigerator at 9 o'clock at night after a stressful day. Instead, change what's in the refrigerator. If you want to stop checking your phone first thing in the morning, don't keep it by your bed. If you want to stop watching too much television, don't sit in the chair that faces the TV when you get home from work. The ancient Taoists understood that our external environment and our internal state are constantly influencing each other. When your environment is chaotic, your mind tends to become chaotic. When your environment is peaceful and organized, your mind naturally becomes more peaceful and organized. This principle extends to habits as well. When your environment makes bad habits convenient and good habits difficult, you're fighting an uphill battle. But when you arrange your environment to support the person you want to become, change happens naturally. This environmental approach works because it bypasses the need for constant decision-making. Every time you have to make a conscious choice between a good option and a bad option, you're using mental energy, and when you're tired or stressed, you're more likely to choose the bad option. But when you change your environment so that the good option is automatic and the bad option requires extra effort, You're working with your natural tendency toward the path of least resistance instead of against it. Think about the environments where your bad habit is strongest. Is it when you're alone or with certain people? Is it in your bedroom, your kitchen, your office? Is it during certain times of day or certain days of the week? Once you identify the environmental triggers, you can begin to modify them gradually. This might mean changing your morning routine, rearranging your living space, or even changing the route you take to work if it passes by triggers for your bad habit. 5. Cultivating what the Taoists call Ziren, or naturalness. Ziren is the quality of being authentic to your true nature, of acting from your genuine self, rather than from conditioning or compulsion. Bad habits are almost always a form of betrayal of your true nature. They're ways of acting that don't align with who you really are or who you want to become. The person who overeats doesn't naturally want to feel sluggish and uncomfortable. The person who procrastinates doesn't naturally want to feel anxious and behind. These behaviors persist because somewhere along the way, we learned that they would help us cope with difficult situations or emotions. But here's what the Taoists understood that modern psychology is just beginning to appreciate. You don't break bad habits by forcing yourself to be someone you're not. You break them by becoming more of who you truly are. When you're living in alignment with your authentic nature, destructive behaviors naturally fall away because they no longer serve you. They feel foreign, uncomfortable, out of sync with the person you're becoming. This process of returning to your natural state requires honest self-examination. What kind of person do you want to be? Not what kind of person do you think you should be, or what kind of person would impress others, but what kind of person would feel most authentic and alive to you. When you connect with this vision of your authentic self, your bad habits begin to feel less like things you can't have and more like things you don't want. This is completely different from the typical approach of trying to become a person who has enough discipline to resist temptation. Instead, you're becoming a person for whom the temptation naturally loses its appeal. The person who naturally eats healthy food isn't constantly resisting the urge to eat junk food. They genuinely prefer how they feel when they eat well. The person who naturally gets their work done isn't constantly fighting the urge to procrastinate. They feel more comfortable and energized when their responsibilities are handled. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen naturally when you consistently make choices that align with your authentic self, rather than choices that betray it. Every time you choose in favor of who you want to become, you strengthen that identity. Every time you choose against it, you weaken it. The beautiful thing is that once this authentic identity becomes strong enough, it maintains itself naturally. You don't need willpower to be yourself. 6. Understanding the principle of yin and yang in habit change. The famous symbol of yin and yang represents the dynamic balance of opposites that exists in everything. In the context of changing habits, this means recognizing that the impulse toward your bad habit and the desire to change both contain important information. Most people try to eliminate the yin, the dark side, the part of them that wants to engage in the destructive behavior. But the Taoists understood that trying to eliminate one side of a duality only makes it stronger. Instead of fighting against the part of you that wants to engage in the bad habit, you can learn to dialogue with it. What is this part of you trying to protect? What does it fear will happen if you change? Often, bad habits persist because part of us is afraid that if we give them up, we'll lose something important. The part of you that wants to keep scrolling social media might be afraid that you'll miss out on something crucial or that you'll feel disconnected from others. The part of you that wants to keep overeating might be afraid that you'll have to face difficult emotions without your usual coping mechanism. When you acknowledge these fears with compassion instead of judgment, something interesting happens. The resistance begins to soften. You might say to yourself, I understand that this habit has been helping me feel connected to others, and I appreciate that intention. Now let's explore some other ways I can feel that connection that will serve me better in the long run. This approach honors both your desire to change and your need for whatever the habit was providing. This inner dialogue approach is based on the Taoist understanding that we contain multiple aspects of ourselves. And lasting change happens when all parts of us are moving in the same direction rather than when some parts are trying to overpower others. When you try to change through force, you create an internal war, and even if you win temporarily, the defeated parts of yourself will regroup and fight back later. But when you change through understanding and integration, all parts of yourself become allies in the transformation process. The yin and yang principle also applies to the timing of change. There are natural cycles in your life when change is easier and times when it's more difficult. The Taoists were keen observers of natural rhythms, and they understood that trying to plant seeds in winter or harvest crops in spring goes against the natural flow. Similarly, There might be times in your life when you have more energy for change, and times when you're better served by focusing on maintenance and stability. This doesn't mean waiting for the perfect moment to change, because that moment might never come. It means being aware of your natural rhythms and working with them rather than against them. If you're going through a particularly stressful period in your life, it might not be the best time to try to eliminate multiple habits at once. But it might be the perfect time to focus on one small change that will actually reduce stress rather than add to it. 7. The art of effortless effort. This is perhaps the most paradoxical and powerful aspect of the Taoist approach to breaking bad habits. Wu Wei, or effortless effort, is not about being passive or doing nothing. It's about learning to distinguish between productive effort and counterproductive effort. When you're trying to break a bad habit through sheer willpower, you're engaging in counterproductive effort. You're fighting against yourself, creating internal resistance, and using up energy that could be better used elsewhere. Effortless effort in habit change means aligning your conscious intentions with your unconscious patterns in a way that feels natural and sustainable. It means making changes that feel like you're flowing downstream rather than swimming upstream. This requires developing a very subtle awareness of what feels forced and what feels natural, what creates more tension and what creates more ease. For example, if you're trying to develop a habit of morning exercise, effortless effort might mean starting with just 5 minutes of gentle movement rather than committing to an hour at the gym. If you're trying to stop emotional eating, effortless effort might mean keeping a journal of your emotions rather than restricting your food intake. These approaches work with your natural tendencies rather than against them. The key is to look for the path of change that feels like the least resistance while still moving you in the direction you want to go. This path is different for everyone because we all have different temperaments, different life circumstances, and different relationships with change. What feels effortless for one person might feel forced for another, so you have to experiment and find your own way. Effortless effort also means being patient with the process of change. In our instant gratification culture, we expect to see results immediately, and when we don't, we assume we're doing something wrong. But the Taoists understood that the most profound changes happen slowly and often invisibly. A tree grows constantly, but you can't see it happening moment to moment. Similarly, you might be changing constantly at a deeper level even when you can't see evidence of it in your daily behavior yet. This patience isn't passive waiting, it's active trust in the process of transformation. It's continuing to plant seeds of new awareness and new choices even when you can't yet see the harvest. It's understanding that every moment of choosing differently, no matter how small, is contributing to a larger shift that will eventually become visible in your external behavior. 8. The principle of water-like persistence. Water is soft and yielding, yet it can carve through the hardest rock given enough time. This is the kind of persistence that actually works for breaking bad habits, not the aggressive, forceful persistence of trying to control every aspect of your behavior, but the gentle, consistent persistence of showing up for yourself day after day, even when you don't feel like it, even when you don't see immediate results. This water-like persistence means approaching your habit change with consistency rather than intensity. Instead of making dramatic efforts for short periods of time, you make small, sustainable efforts over long periods of time. Instead of trying to be perfect, you focus on being consistent. Instead of measuring your success by how dramatically you can change, you measure it by how sustainably you can maintain the changes you do make. Most people fail at changing habits because they approach it like a sprint when it's actually a marathon. They put all their energy into the first few days or weeks, burn themselves out, and then give up when they inevitably hit a wall. But water-like persistence means pacing yourself for the long term. It means making changes that you can maintain even when life gets difficult, even when you're tired, even when you're stressed. This approach requires redefining what success looks like. Instead of expecting linear progress, you expect a path with ups and downs, setbacks and breakthroughs, periods of rapid change and periods of apparent stagnation. You measure your success not by whether you never engage in your bad habit again, but by whether you're moving in the direction of the person you want to become over time. Water-like persistence also means being flexible in your approach. Water doesn't try to go through obstacles, it flows around them. Similarly, when you encounter obstacles in changing your habits, instead of trying to power through them, you can look for creative ways to work with them or around them. If your plan isn't working, you adjust the plan rather than abandoning the goal. This flexibility prevents you from falling into the all-or-nothing thinking that destroys so many change attempts. You know that missing one day doesn't ruin your progress, that having a setback doesn't mean you're back at square one, and that needing to modify your approach doesn't mean you're failing. You develop the resilience to keep going even when things don't go according to plan. The ancient Taoist masters understood something that modern science is now confirming through research on neuroplasticity and habit formation. Lasting change happens not through dramatic efforts, but through the accumulation of small, consistent actions over time. Every time you choose differently, you're literally rewiring your brain, creating new neural pathways that will eventually become stronger than the old ones. But this rewiring happens gradually, below the level of conscious awareness, like water slowly changing the shape of stone. As we near the end of our exploration together, I want you to take a moment to reflect on what resonates most deeply with you from everything we've discussed. Perhaps it's the understanding that your bad habit is trying to meet a legitimate need, or the recognition that fighting against yourself creates more problems than it solves. Maybe it's the insight that your environment has been working against you, or the realization that you've been trying to change too quickly and dramatically. Whatever stands out to you is probably exactly what your system most needs to hear right now. The path of breaking bad habits through Taoist principles isn't about becoming someone different. It's about becoming more authentically yourself. It's about removing the obstacles to your natural well-being rather than forcing yourself into an unnatural mold. When you align your daily choices with your deepest values and authentic nature, destructive patterns naturally fall away because they no longer serve the person you're becoming. Remember that this is not a destination you arrive at, but a way of being that you cultivate day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. There will be days when you fall back into old patterns, and that's not failure, that's part of the process. The question isn't whether you'll ever make mistakes again, but whether you'll continue to choose growth and awareness even in the face of those mistakes. The Taoist sage doesn't aim for perfection, but for harmony with the natural flow of life. Your bad habits developed as part of that flow, as intelligent responses to difficult circumstances, and they will dissolve as part of that same flow when you no longer need what they provide. Trust in your innate wisdom, be patient with your human imperfections, and allow the gentle persistence of water to guide your transformation. If this exploration of ancient Taoist wisdom for modern habit change has resonated with you, I want to invite you to continue this journey with us. This channel is dedicated to translating timeless wisdom into practical guidance for the challenges you face every day. We dive deep into the teachings of great philosophers and spiritual masters, not as abstract concepts to admire from a distance, but as living tools that can transform how you show up in the world. By subscribing, you're not just following a channel. You're joining a community of people who understand that true change comes from wisdom, not willpower, and that the path to transformation is one we walk together. Your journey toward freedom from destructive patterns is just beginning, and every video we share is designed to offer you another piece of the puzzle, another tool for the toolkit, another perspective that might be exactly what you need to hear in exactly the moment you need to hear it. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because your future self will thank you for every piece of wisdom you gather along the way.